Welcome to the Let's Stay Healthy radio show, sponsored and brought to you by Montana Harvest Natural Food Store in Billings, Montana. If you don't spend time on your wellness, you're going to be forced to spend time on your illness. Your health is your most valuable asset. Invest in it by tuning in now.
Welcome, everybody, to Let's Stay Healthy. Michael Ray here with you from Montana Harvest. I'm here with Kimmy Oliver from Montana Harvest, and we have one of our favorite guests on with us, Jamie from Wholesun Mushrooms, and she's going to be talking to us. Exciting thing come out about mushrooms in the vitamin D form. Kimmy, do you have any announcements or anything you want to do?
No, I'm just super excited to have her on and be able to see you with Wholesun Wellness mushrooms. And I'm really excited about the new vitamin D that we brought in with your company.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool, innovative product, right? Do you want me to tell you about it, or do you have certain questions that you would like me to answer about the product? I think giving you the backstory of how I came up with this product is a good thing, because, most of the vitamin Ds in the market does not come from mushrooms alone. It's like algae, animal wool, stuff like that. And so back in 2017, when I first started my company, I always knew that mushrooms supported high amounts of vitamin D, but not to the point that I would want to make a label claim yet, right? So over the years, and first off, let's talk about how mushrooms get vitamin D from UV, from the sun. So anytime you buy a mushroom product, you want to make sure that they're sunbathing, sun drying, some kind of UV, or you're not going to get the vitamin D in the mushrooms, even like your portobellas. You go buy some portobellas from the store, you want to put them out on your patio or somewhere that's going to get UV for 30 minutes, then you cook it. Because if you don't do that, you're not getting those high amounts of vitamin D that the mushrooms naturally provide. So back in 2017, I always wanted to do a D product, but I was like, gosh, how am I going to create something like this? Because D3, usually comes from a different form. And then, and then D2 is the main component of mushrooms. Well, over all these years, because we do our own direct trade and our own extraction processes, SOPs, we develop our own innovation. It was finally just recently that all this time we were able to take certain species of mushrooms that are in the Ultra D product and do a high UV technology extraction, where we were able to test out showing not just high amounts of D, but also D3, which was groundbreaking. Over years and years, they're like, no way, D3 is not going to come through mushrooms. There are now clinicals and studies showing that if you do the right technology of the UV extraction and technology, you can convert D3 as well as the D2. The other really cool thing that we found making this product is called D4. D4, no one ever has heard of this. I mean, it's not anything new. In Europe and other places like Asia, D4 is very common, but a lot of companies don't emphasize it on their products. It is another form of D that comes from mushrooms. So you have D2, which is a base, D3, and D4. You can only find D4 in mushrooms. You cannot find it anywhere else. So when we were deep diving with labs that specialize in D testing, because we couldn't just go to like a third party and say, oh, test our products. We had to go to labs that this is all they do, is specialize in vitamins and minerals, and especially D. When I found out there was D4, when I started innovating this product, I also found a lab that was able to test for it. And the more that I have dived in, I'm just like, wow, D4 is the main precursor of all the Ds in the mushroom. And, you look at like D3, sometimes they say you can't take too much because it's not good. D4, there's no limits. Like, it helps with bone density, metabolism, energy, immune support. Everything that D3 and D2 does, D4 does without having to worry about toxic, levels, right? And it's also really cool because the more that I've been diving into this own innovation that I created, I am learning so much more about D4 that I'm like, why? Why has no one ever tested for this? And there's actually clinical studies on D4. So this is even better because you can go into like PubMed. And I mean, anybody, and we have studies that we can share with you all if your customers or listeners want to geek out. But they've been studying D4 for a long time, but nobody's ever thought about using it or talking about it or testing for it. So making this product, because I am a mushroom company, like with anything we do, we're mushroom focused. I wanted, as a consumer, a better food source for my vitamins and minerals. I did not want algae. I didn't want all this other stuff. I was like, no, I know mushrooms have it. After it took us about 5-6 months of testing, because with the FDA and also because we're in clinics, we have to back our claims. And we are now making claims with this product where our other mushrooms, it's like, yeah, we know there's beta glucans, we know there's these great compounds. But with this product, since we were actually making claims and percentages, it took us forever to launch the product because we had to verify it through testing. And we went through multiple labs. And I just think the more people start geeking out like I have, they're going to fall in love with this product. It's truly a vegan food-based product. You can't go wrong with it.
Well, and I've heard for a while now that mushrooms are the best way to get your vitamin D. Do you find that there's certain mushrooms that are higher in vitamin D than others?
Oh, yes, definitely. So in the Ultra D product, I have shiitake and maitake. Those are the two mushrooms that contain the highest amounts of vitamin D. Now, oysters and other mushrooms, even lion's mane, turkey tail, all that, yes, they do have vitamin D, but those two, shiitake and maitake, have the highest levels, hands down. And go ahead.
Sorry, what about tremella?
Tremella has D as well. I mean, we just had a customer, because we supply other companies. We had one of our customers that we supply our raw ingredients to come back and say, we were blown away with the vitamin profile we just found with tremella. So yes, there is a lot of mushrooms that are high in these vitamins and micronutrients that are still not fully been discovered, right? Because a lot of people aren't testing for it. When I started testing for nutritional information with our mushrooms, we were the first company to do this because as a consumer myself, medicinal mushrooms are not, I don't feel like they're a supplement, like in that class, like they're a supplementation, but it truly is a therapeutic food. And I wanted to know what vitamins and minerals. I found out there were small amounts of calcium in mushrooms. I mean, not enough to really do much, but it's like those little micro, like, oh, whoa, there's some calcium. But that leads me back to when I formulated this product. I was like, okay, we finally got the extraction technology down. We're pulling out higher amounts. You know, our Ultra D, we capped it at 5,000. I feel like that's efficient. I know working with a lot of doctors, they say if you're depleted, they start at a higher, but you really shouldn't be taking high amounts, right? Especially if it's coming from a good source. Your body doesn't need that much. But when I started deep diving just into this product, and even when I was doing the nutritional testing for single species of mushrooms and putting it on the labels, I was in disbelief too, because it all also starts from the growing. So we've seen numbers kind of change too, depending on the grow of the mushroom, what it's being exposed to, the hardwoods, the food changes the amounts and nutrients that the mushroom's going to have, just like the compounds itself. So when somebody's like, well, we got to have beta glucans. I always say beta glucan, which I'm sure you see that all the time on mushroom products. Oh, we have this many beta glucans. Whenever you think of beta glucans, you think of that as the immune system of a mushroom. That's all it is. It's the immune system. It lies in 50% of the chitin, which is a fibrous wall of the mushroom itself. So it is highly in the fiber. Yes, we want amounts of beta glucans because it is for our immune system too. But there's all these other compounds that mushrooms produce that we also want therapeutic amounts of, especially if you're doing it on a clinical standpoint. Someone that's going through major illness, they're not just going to get it from the beta glucan. So it's like you want the whole shebang, right? And that's what got me started in like, okay, we're going to test outside of the beta glucans for the therapeutic compounds. Now we're going to do nutritional testing. And now we're going to start deep diving in specific compounds of vitamins. So coming up this year in 2026, we're going to be launching a B vitamin complex to go along with the Ultra D. And again, it's all from mushrooms, but it takes a lot of, it's not just about how we're growing it, it's also how we're processing it. And then making sure we're testing out the validity that like, okay, this is how much D4, D3, and vitamin D is in this product. When we discovered there was D3 in mushrooms, that it was no longer just like, oh no, D3, it's crazy. There's certain compounds in the vitamins itself, in the mushrooms, that have been able to convert it to D3, just like the vitamin D and D4. So I still feel like we have a lot to learn as a mushroom educator, but like also nerd, and this is all I do. I am still learning things every day that I'm like, how is that even possible? And so I'm really proud of the Ultra D. When we launched it, it's become one of our top sellers. We haven't done any marketing with it yet. I think this year I'll try to push it more because we're in a lot of independents. We're not in big chains, right? And we're not on Amazon. We support independent retailers. And I told my social person, now that we're doing social media, I had to get hip, I guess. I'm like, it's time to market this product because we almost sold out of it within the first few months that we launched it. I think consumers want to be more connected with what they're putting in their body, but food. This is food. All the mushrooms in this product, you can eat culinary wise. There's nothing in the Ultra D that you couldn't go to your local farmer's market, buy, saute it up, and eat it. Of course, you're not going to get the high amounts that we have in our product because of our extraction in the UV process. But if people went and ate maitake, of course, shiitake, agaricus, oysters, they're going to be thriving just by eating these mushrooms. They're still getting these benefits, so I think it's going to be
I have a question for you, Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you guys determine the strength of the vitamin D in the mushrooms? Like, is it like micrograms, international units? I mean, how do you know what strength you're getting by eating these?
So eating them, I'm not sure how you would measure out, just because I know like portobellos are high in vitamin D, but I don't know the percentage. However, going back to that, I do know a lot of mushroom manufacturers that are selling in the grocery market. I do believe they show it now on their nutritional information. Or I know there's some companies like Monterey and other companies that if you go to their website, it will have a nutritional breakdown of what's in white button mushrooms. So I do think, more companies are getting on that train of like, let's show you the nutritional component. But with ours, since it's a different technology, right? It's an extraction through UV. We had to test out, and this is what the lab specialized. They were able to break down the percentages of how many, IUs of we had one batch that was over 8,000. And I'm like, well, I'm not wanting to market 8,000 IUs per serving. We need to get it, to be about 5,000. I feel like that's a great base, but that's all through testing. We're able to do that through testing to break that down. But if you were looking more like just going and buying a dried, a mushroom at a farmer's market or in the grocery store to cook, I know a lot of companies now are putting this information on their website because more people are wanting to know.
Well, and more people are wanting whole food based supplements and they're wanting to get away from the synthetics. So that's really awesome that you're coming out with a whole food B vitamin. But could you also talk about the vitamin K? I know there's a small amount also with that Ultra D.
Right. So when we did the first initial testing, the lab guy has been testing, for vitamin D for over 20 years and different minerals. And I asked him, I sent him a list of everything I wanted tested for. And I said, okay, I want my D complex, I want amino acids, ergothioneine, ergosterol, which are major compounds in mushrooms that also are high in the D. That's why we wanted those tested out, because those two compounds are what help deliver the D in a mushroom and create it, right? So I wanted those tested out. And then just for giggles, I was like, can you test for K2? And he's like, what? And he's like, in all the years I've been testing mushrooms, no one has ever asked me to test for K2. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not no one. I just want to know, because and the reason what got me to test for K2 is because when I was looking at my own market research and then also talking to some of my reps like Brad and all these great people, they're like, oh, you got to have K2, you got to have K2. And I'm like, I don't want to put synthetic stuff in this product. So if there's K2, yes, we will put it on the label. If there's not, then it'll just be a product without. Well, when the lab tested and got back to us, there was K2. And I was like, no way. There's no way there's K2 in this product. And the reason why, it's not because of the mushroom itself. It's our way of fermentation. So I have a really nice little educational sheet to understand the K2 in the product, because people are like, you can't get K2 from mushrooms. Well, no. But if you're doing a fermentation process with the growth and also the processing of the mushroom, that actually builds K2 from the fermentation. So that is how we were able to get K2 in the product. So it's not necessarily from the shiitake, right? It's from the processing from after we're growing, and then we do a little bit of a fermentation with an extraction. And because of that one step we do is how the K2 comes alive. So it's not a synthetic way, right? So we're getting it from the process. We're not adding anything, but because we do the fermentation aspect, it produces K2, and now we have it in our product without synthetics.
That's awesome. Can you talk a little bit for the listening audience that might not have heard you on before about how you started your company, how mushrooms healed you, and share that story, but also how there's a lot of companies out there selling mushroom products that are not grown in the proper environment. They're not grown on hardwood. And because we have people come in, I saw this on TV and I want this coffee mushroom drink. And
I'll lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks,
yeah,
or I'll have 20 orgasms in one night. I mean, no, that's a lot of the marketing that's going on. And I'm like, what? Not to make you blush or anything, but I just saw an article the other day, and the lady's like, I drink this mushroom coffee, and me and my husband just can't. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And people it's such good marketing. They're like, I want to go buy that. And then what happens when that doesn't happen? What happens when they don't lose 20 pounds in a week or two? It's very misleading. And then those people are like, oh, I'm never going to touch mushrooms again. So a little breakdown of how I got started. I've always been into natural medicine because of the way I was raised. I never even knew what a supplement was in a health food store. Of course, I knew organic food stores, but I never went into a supplement focused store. And I remember as a time when I was a stay-at-home mom, raising my kids, and I was just like, I was dealing with really bad Crohn's colitis to the point that I weighed 80 pounds. I was rectally bleeding for 4 months, like almost like being on a period. They wanted to remove my colon and do this thing called a J pouch. And I was like, hell no. You're not removing my colon. I'm not doing this. So I went back to my roots, started doing natural medicine, making my own regimen. Well, a friend of mine told me about a product called Curamed. And I was like, what is Curamed? Because I was in a lot of pain. Like I was in so much pain. I I had a hard time walking. I'm a very outdoorsy, active person. I bike, I climb, I do all this stuff. I couldn't do anything. I could barely get out of bed. And so I went to this store. And by the way, Curamed was amazing. It changed my life. And so I went into this store called Sherlin's Natural Foods here in Utah. The first day I go in, I buy the Curamed. They offered me a job. And I'm like, what? Okay. And so I started working part-time. I'm like, okay, whatever. And I knew about mushrooms, but I wasn't really deep into mushrooms and at the time I was still having all these medical issues. And so I was heavy on the Curamed, which it totally saved my life when it came to the pain. I mean, that product is phenomenal. But then as I was working there, shortly after I was working there, I got an opportunity to do demos for a company called Host Defense. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so I really started deep diving into their mushrooms. Well, for some reason, chaga was just calling to me. I don't know why, but it was just calling to me. And so I started buying chaga in the whole like chunks. I didn't buy anything in the store to use. I made my own medicine instead. And I was deeply heavy on the chaga. I did so much chaga. I hate chaga. I don't want to say I hate it. I just can't do it anymore. It's like I did it for a year. I mean, I was drinking, eating every single day. So the first 6 months I was dosing myself with chaga, I slowly started losing the blood flow that I was having, the rectal stuff. I was gaining weight. I wasn't in the bathroom all the time. Everything was changing for me. So within 6 months, I started to feel better. Within a year, I went into complete remission. So after 12 months, I went into complete remission. And then after that is when probably a year after that is when I started my company. And I started my company because it was such a life-changing event for me that I was like, wow, mushrooms are phenomenal. I want to offer them differently, because at the time in the market, most what was being offered was a mycelium, not so much the fruiting bodies that were being grown on their natural substrates, which is hardwoods, right? And so I just decided to start my own company. I had no idea what I was doing. Within the first 6 months, we started partnering with retailers, local retailers. And then we now are the one company for over almost 9 years now that have been partnered with cancer clinics. So it's been pretty remarkable. We went into more clinics than we did retailers at first. But it all stemmed from my health. And by the way, I don't use it as marketing. Most people don't even know my story. Like, I don't go tell people like, yeah, I'm in remission now because of mushrooms. But because of what happened to me, my GI that was against me, she now recommends chaga to all her patients. She even tells people to make chaga suppositories.
Wow.
You can make your own suppositories and add chaga and put it, and that gets right into the bloodstream. It's a phenomenal way to deal with Crohn's, colitis, all these IBS and all this stuff like that. So that's my beginning. And then over the years, I didn't want to not know where my mushrooms were coming from. When I tried to source in the US, there was not source. It was mainly the mycelium grown on grain. I didn't want that. So I made my own supply chain. So we're direct with all of our farmers around the world. We have 10 countries we're partnered with, and we have our US operation now. So we started, sourcing in different countries at first. And then over the last 6-7 years, we are also now sourcing from independent farms that grow for us for our retail brand. And then we also supply other companies with our raw ingredients. And again, the logs, let's talk about why it's so important mushrooms grow on hardwoods. So as we eat, when we're eating food, we want our vegetables grown in soil, not in oats, not in straw, not in other things, right? It needs that rich nutrient soil to produce the nutrients that say a tomato needs. Mushrooms are the same way. Their food is the hardwoods that they grow on. That's why in the forest, you see them on decaying wood. You're not going to see it on, you can't grow mushrooms on straw. and other things. But their natural habitat is the decaying hardwoods. That is where they feed. That's where they get their nutrients. They get the nutrients from that. That also helps with their precursors of the compounds, the beta glucans. So I had the ability to cut costs and grow on grain if I wanted to. I chose not to. When I partnered with, like, especially our Europe farmers to Asia, to India, all of our farms overseas, they grow on the natural substrates. But here in the US, a lot of people just grow on the grain because it's cheaper. You can mass produce, and they developed that back in France in the late 20s to be more sustainable, right, than cutting down trees. But if you grow it that way, you're lacking the micronutrients that these mushrooms need. So if you're a hobbyist, and I'm sure there's a lot of hobbyists that come into your store that want to grow mushrooms, they really need to look for a source where they can have the hardwood in there, as well as even soil. So they're getting those micronutrients that the mushrooms need, because they're not going to get it from a foreign substrate. Just like when you eat, you're needing that absorption to be correctly, the nutrients, like the D is a perfect example. The one reason why there's those high amounts of D is because the mushrooms are feeding off of what they're supposed to be feeding off of. Chaga is a parasite. It attacks the birch tree, and it only attacks a wounded birch tree. Once it connects to that wounded birch tree, it feeds off of it, but it keeps the birch tree alive. It heals the birch tree. So it's like this great relationship, and then the tree dies, the chaga dies. That shows you how important it is that these mushrooms get their natural foods, just like us. I can go on forever. I ramble a lot. Sorry.
It sounds, excuse me. It sounds like your mushrooms are like the grass-fed regenerative,
Right.
beef versus the beef that's grown in feedlots,
100%. 100%. And what's really cool, what our farms are doing, so it's the full cycle, right? They're taking the leftover substrates and using it for compost in the soil for growing vegetables and other things. There's now a new thing that's really cool. They're taking some of the leftover substrate and mixing it into the feed of livestock. So cows, horses, all that. It's almost like a super micronutrient additive that they're using it to feed livestock instead of throwing it away. So it's a really cool cycle. It's coming from the earth, you're producing it, you're getting these beautiful mushrooms that are highly nutritious, and then you take the end waste and put it back into the earth. So it's like zero waste.
That's incredible. What products, because this intrigued me when you said that you were in more clinics and cancer clinics than stores, what specific products are they utilizing?
So the top mushrooms that we see most oncologists recommend to their patients are shiitake, maitake, and our deep immune product. So our deep immune product, which I think you guys have, it's a 7 blend of mushrooms. That is like a staple. It's like that product is like an everyday multivitamin without the omegas, right? So that's something you could take every day. The shiitake and maitake are probably the strongest immune fighting, cancer fighting mushrooms. If you look at any study clear back in Asia, those are the top 2. Turkey tail is used as well, especially during women that are going through breast cancer and stuff. But they're also combining it with the deep immune. Like the deep immune is like a base, is like your everyday vitamin, and then they're targeting with a single. For example, like when COVID hit, right? We donated, I think, over $80,000 of maitake. We had drop boxes all over Utah, and we put an ad up saying, "Come get mushrooms to support yourself through COVID because it's a viral thing." There's a lot of research back even before COVID that maitake was great for the flu virus. You know, when we just recently had this outbreak, I think it was in Texas, we had a store call us. They ordered over 150 bottles of our Deep Immune. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you ordering that much? And I wanted to know because I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And it was during, I think, the measles outbreak. So we ended up sending them 100 bags of not measles, 100 bags of Mataki powder. So anybody that bought the Deep Immune, they would get a 60-day supply of the Mataki because Mataki is great for that kind of stuff. But also, too, if somebody came in and they couldn't afford it, give them a bag because there was a serious outbreak. And this was just, I think, last year. But yeah, so those are the top mushrooms, our shiitake, maitake, the Deep Immune. I mean, if somebody's going through stuff, they don't have to get our Deep Immune, but at least do the shiitake or maitake. You can't go wrong. And there's a laundry list of clinicals, and we're seeing it with our doctors. It's really cool when we get these clinics telling us, you know, they can't obviously tell us everything because of privacy, but coming back saying the markers are changing. This person is no longer, you know, like stuff like that. I had a friend, he owns a nonprofit called Survivor Wellness here in Utah. It's a total nonprofit for cancer. He started it years and years and years ago, and it's phenomenal. It helps people go through the process, but also helps them after the process. After the doctor kicks them out and like a, you know, guinea pig, now go take care of yourself. They teach you how to take care of yourself to keep the cancer away. And it's 100% nonprofit. They have people from all over the world that come here to get the benefits. But he recently connected with me probably about a year ago because he had stage 4 cancer. This guy and he was a doctor, started this whole process. I made him a mix, heard from him the other day, and he's like, I'm good. I'm good. And I'm like, yes. So wow. I really believe, and it doesn't matter just on clinical stuff. It's like, as we're aging, as our memory is depleting, as, you know, our stomach to liver to kidney to respiratory, mushrooms truly are the staple of an everyday preventative health, clinical to not. Like going back to my issues with the Crohn's colitis, I don't take chaga anymore. I took it for 12 months, and chaga does taste like dirt, especially the way that I was taking it. I wasn't taking capsules. I was making a tea, and then I was also combining it in my food. So, but I have not taken chaga. It's been, I don't think I've religiously taken chaga for probably over 8 years.
So
I just don't take it anymore. And I've not had any issues. Now I just can't keep the weight off because I'm growing older and hormones change, but like I can eat whatever I want. And so I guess my point there is, you should take a mushroom product as a preventative every day because we're depleted already from nutrients from our soil, stuff like that. So it's a great preventative. But if you're using it for a clinical reason, mushrooms go in, they're like little scrubbers, they're detoxifiers. They scrub out your body, break it down, and then they start repairing and rebuilding. And it's not something you're going to have to take the rest of your life. Once you get in balance, you just take a preventative product like for your brain or just overall immune, if that makes sense.
Which one would you recommend for somebody like in their 40s, 50s that are starting to get older for preventative?
So I would always, I always push the deep brain product because you're getting, you know, as we age, our brain just everything changes. You know, I'm now 48, I'm almost 50, and I'm just like, holy Hannah, like where did I put my keys? Or what's that person's name? Oh my gosh. And I'm always like, God, I need to take my own mushrooms because I'm like starting to like see it. But the deep brain I feel is a go-to because it has 6 different mushrooms in there. And the great thing about my formulations I've done, you get the benefit of the actual formulation of the brain support, but those mushrooms, you're also getting the benefit that they do individually. So it's a structured product, but if like my Real Energy has reishi in it. Reishi is great for calming, allergies, respiratory. It's a natural steroid. There's all this stuff that reishi does that the energy product is to get up and go, but you're still getting those benefits that reishi does because we're putting therapeutic amounts in there. So we're actually giving you enough to get the benefit of the mushroom individually and as a structure function. So I'd say the deep brain, the deep immune is a staple. I always feel that one is because you're getting 7 different mushrooms. It's an everyday multivitamin. I mean, you can't go wrong with it. You're getting all the individual mushrooms we sell at a great dosage. And it's an overall, for someone that goes to the wall of mushrooms and are like, I have no idea. I have no idea which one to take. Here's one for sleep. Here's one for brain, energy. They all sound good. Do I take them all? If you get a customer like that, tell them to take the deep immune because they're getting the whole body support, brain support, kidney, liver, cardiovascular, energy, metabolism, digestion, all from the deep immune. Unless you have a customer that comes in and they're like, wow, I am not sleeping at night. Then you know how to target focus. Like, oh, reishi would be good, or the sleep health would be good. Somebody comes in for energy and they're just fatigued all the time. Maybe it's a female going through hormonal changes, but low on energy. You say the Real Energy or even cordyceps. So you can play around with it like that. But if somebody's overwhelmed, that's when you always say the deep immune because they can't go wrong with that product. I really feel that's the number one product to take unless they're targeting. But the brain one, reason why I say that for 40s and 50s is because our brain needs more love, a lot more love as we're aging.
What about people that have went through a series of cancers or something? They recover, because we get people like that in the store to protect themselves from going forward. Because a lot of them get freaked out, and sometimes it comes back because of different things. But I mean, what would you recommend for something like that?
So, I mean, I'll go back to the deep immune, but one of my favorite single mushrooms is shiitake. Shiitake keeps things away. It truly does. It stops tumor growth. It is just a phenomenal mushroom that is so underrated. I always tell people if I was out in the middle of nowhere, shiitake would be the one mushroom I take with me because it is the one mushroom that works every single system in your body, including your brain. They did a really cool thing, a study on as we age, we don't absorb certain nutrients correctly in our brain function, right? Like B vitamins, folate, all of that. It's proven that shiitake keeps the nutrients flowing into your body correctly to absorb in your brain. It's a phenomenal product. It helps regrow brain tissue. Like lion's mane is known for neuropathy, nerve growth factors. Same with tremella. Those two do the neuropathy aspect, which are both in the deep brain. Same with shiitake. So you get but double whammy there, right? You're getting all the powerhouses in the deep brain. That's why I usually recommend it. But shiitake is just a mushroom that is one of the strongest immune supporting mushrooms out of all mushrooms. And if you look at research, it has the most research in keeping like somebody that goes through cancer, they're in remission. It's going to help them stay in remission and help detoxify, keep cells, bacteria, everything where it needs to be. Where a lot of these other mushrooms, I'm not saying they're not powerhouses, but cordyceps isn't one that I tell someone to take after cancer treatment. I mean, that's going to give you energy. All mushrooms do give you energy to a point. Cordyceps is just like the get up and go kind of energy, right? But I mean, if you're going after treatment and you're wanting to keep it away, and you're trying to only implement things in your, besides what you can't control environmentally because of what it is, what you're putting in your body, shiitake is a number one staple, 100%. And it's high, again, in all of your vitamins and minerals, including D, which D is really important as well to our health. And it does help us stay healthy. And it's a great preventative. So yeah, I would say that, or like, one of the blends.
That's awesome.
You just get a little more bang. Like when you do a single mushroom, if say someone does the powders, our single powders, they're getting a 2-month compared to our blends that we only do in a 30-day, unfortunately.
Do you find in your studies that mushrooms help detox the body, say of heavy metals, helps regulate obviously your microbiome with what you were dealing with?
100%. And also, overgrowth of yeast. What's that? Is it called
Candida?
Yeah. So there's certain mushrooms that help with candida too. Also, and shiitake is one of them. Like a lot of people will ask me why I don't do agarikon, right? And I'm like, agarikon is a very rare species of mushroom. I don't think anybody should be selling agarikon, because these mushrooms can live up to 100 years. They get really big, and so they should not be cultivated go and wildcrafted just to make a product. I know there are some companies that are trying to just do the mycelium strain of agarikon, but the fruit is really important as well to have both. But reason why I'm talking about agarikon, because I get a lot of customers that deal with shingles. And shiitake does the same as agarikon. That's why I'm saying like shiitake should be your powerhouse. You should have like a shiitake blow up in your store. Like it's just really the number one of all mushrooms. When I go to Asia to do these international conferences, I'll have to email you some of the pictures. They worship shiitake.
Wow.
Shiitake is worshiped. We went to one of the temples, had our temple robes and everything, offering to their, warriors and stuff. It's all shiitake. It's just, they really worship shiitake. That's why I'm like, and I've tried to educate on it a lot more, and I do add it to a lot of my blends, but I always am like, if you don't know, do shiitake. It's the one mushroom that works every single system in your body. Let me pinpoint though a few drug interactions, because I'm sure you have people come in and are on medication. Blood thinners, people cannot be taking reishi. It's just no matter what. If they're on any kind of blood thinner, they cannot take reishi. Reishi naturally thins the blood already. It's just not good. If somebody's about to go have surgery and they're older, they shouldn't be doing reishi, because again, and then the other one is maitake. If you're diabetic type 2 and you're on a like sugar medication, maitake will naturally lower your sugar levels. So you might drop too low. Now it's something that if somebody didn't want to take pharmaceuticals, they could have their doctor help them just take maitake, and it's going to do the same stuff as what their pharmaceuticals would do, but more of a natural food approach. So those are the two contradictions. Everything else, we work with a lot of psychiatrists that use our deep brain and other products. There is no contradictions at all with any of the mushrooms, with any other kind of medication.
Well, I got one more fun question for you here. I happened to come across this in one of your articles, and mushrooms for hormones, and then also male sexual functions.
Right.
And I never knew that mushrooms could do any kind of enhancement or help there. And so anyway, it was kind of interesting. And of course, you brought it up earlier in your...
Yeah, with the 20 orgasms.
Well, you didn't clarify, but that's okay.
Yeah. That was just some ad I saw about a coffee. I was like, whoa, I take mushrooms. Like, what the heck?
Well, they have all these pills and all these things for men and women.
Yeah. So I've actually been working on a him and her product for ED and women for, dryness, other things, hormonal. I have so many different formulations I've created. It's just launching them and being effective, right? Because I want any product I launch to be effective. That's why I'm doing the B product next, because I think it'll make a great combo with the D. So going back to like ED, testosterone, libido, energy, endurance, cordyceps is a powerhouse. It helps with blood flow, all of that. Even another thing you can recommend is, so if somebody loves eating mushrooms, white button mushrooms are really good for men's hormonal testosterone support, libido. So they just really help with all of men's health. And that's why I always tell somebody, like, we have a lot of products for women, which a lot of mushrooms do help with women's complications as well. Painful periods, heavy bleeding, dryness, different like loss of intimacy. Like there's all this stuff that's going on chemically with us that mushrooms help balance. But when it comes to men, there's all kinds of products. I'm even seeing them, all kinds of products. Like here's a magic pill. Well, what's in this magic pill? What are you taking? What synthetics are they putting in there? I know, a lot of times I'll see like niacin and other things in these products for men, and cordyceps. There's just pages after pages of actual clinical stuff, not placebo, but clinical stuff showing that it improves men's sexual health. It also helps with the endurance, stamina, cardiovascular, all of that, your metabolism. As men age, they start gaining weight in different places that women do, and their body slows down, testosterone, everything. Women go through the same thing. We start expanding. That's how I'm feeling now. Like I'm getting older. I'm like, wow, hormones really do change your day to day as you get older. But these mushrooms, again, they go in and they trigger these points that are not functioning correctly, especially like testosterone and stuff. And it helps restore that. It fixes it, right? It balances it. So I feel cordyceps, number one for men's health. I think I do have a really good, I think I might have a few articles on my website. We use my website as an educational point with blogs, but I think there's a few on there about men's sexual health. And there's also a few that are mixed with men and women. I would definitely suggest having your customers read it. We don't want them buying off our website. We charge a lot more, by the way. So I'm saying this now, if any listeners go to our website, our prices are higher on purpose. So you have to go to the store and support mom and pops. They get a lower every day. So we purposely do that to drive, business into stores. But if you're wanting to educate, our library is amazing. We're constantly putting out new educational material, and there are some great pieces we just put out for hormonal health as well as sexual health for men.
And I just want to do a quick note that we have a lot of your blends in capsules or powder forms.
Right.
And so maybe you can tell the listening audience a little bit, adding the powder to teas and drinks or their food.
Okay, so when I started Wholesun Wellness, I didn't do capsules because I wanted everyone to look at it more as a food, as like an added ingredient, right? And a lot of people want to do capsules because it's easier for them to do. And so that's why we finally started the capsules. But the great thing about the powders is you can put it in whatever you're eating, drinking, cooking, anything. It's not going to decrease the potency. It's not going to change anything. You're not going to I do this a lot with pasta. So whenever I make pasta, I put the mushrooms in the dough, and then it just gives it now my pasta is like a superfood. And so I'm getting doses of the mushrooms as I'm eating my pasta, right? I put it in pizza crust. I bake with it during Thanksgiving. I put it in my stuffing. I added some of my shiitake, mix it in there, cook with it. The great thing about the powders, people should just look at the powders as like an added ingredient. Like when you're adding salt and pepper or you're adding something, instead you're just adding this amazing superfood and whatever you're eating and drinking and cooking or baking, and your regular food is now a highly nutritious micronutrient food because you've added the mushrooms. So you're getting a better benefit. You're not tasting it, because a lot of people don't do the powders because of the taste. And also a lot of reason why people don't do the powders is because you have to be consistent. Every day you have to make sure you're taking your dose, where capsules seem to be a lot easier. But if you can get in a habit and having like a mason jar on your counter, and you just are like, oh, I'm going to scoop these in my soup today, or I'm going to sprinkle this in my eggs, or I'm going to mix this in my oatmeal. You're getting your daily dose with no effort, and you're getting a superfood, and the heat won't affect it because we've already done the processing. We do shelf stability testing on our products. And, technically we're at a 5-year, we say 4, but that shows the potency of the product. So even heating it is not going to affect that. My company is a little different because we don't go through a third party. We actually are our own certifier through the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food. So every year we have to do yearly audits, inspections. We're an NOP processor, manufacturer, grower, all of that in order to get our USDA. There's different compliancy we have compared to just taking a product, approving the label, and then putting it in the market, which is how most companies do it as a third party. So we have to test out our stability as well. So that's the best way. Put it in a smoothie. It's just easy, quick. And also, depending on what mushroom, like shiitake, it made my stuffing have a shiitake flavor.
That's awesome. We only have about 2 minutes left. I don't know if there's any last final things that you want to end with today, Jamie.
Just do mushrooms. I mean, bake mushrooms.
Shiitake mushrooms. That's my favorite one to say anyways.
Right. Oh God, I love that.
Oh, shiitake mushrooms.
Oh, shiitake. So I do actually have it planned finally with Brad. I am going to be up there in May. Yay. So I will be doing store tours and bringing goodies. So I'll keep you guys posted with that. But I would just say, when it comes to your consumers and this wall of mushrooms, I always say we were here before the shroom boom. We're going to be here after. If you don't understand packaging, labeling, you're confused because and then you're going to the cheapest product because you're like, oh, all mushrooms are the same. No, mushrooms are not created equal. Really do your research on them to make sure you're getting what you really need.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jamie. Then we'll be back on in the morning.
You're listening to the Let's Stay Healthy radio show, sponsored and brought to you by Montana Harvest Natural Food Store in Billings, Montana.